Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
Greetings, and thank you so much for joining me, Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. Today, I'm so happy to have as our guest Mr. Greg MacPherson, who is a pharmacist as well as the author of a new book called Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging. And Greg shows us a lot of interesting information about how to protect your DNA from damaging disruptors that cause aging, such as ultraviolet rays from the sun, air pollution, smoking, and many other nuanced activities that go on in our body. He'll also discuss how fasting on a routine basis can turn back on a cellular level to help you age more favorably. So let's bring on author of Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging, pharmacist Greg MacPherson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Greg.
Ellen, it's great to be with you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, I want to go back in time a little bit. Why did you become a pharmacist?
That's a really good question, and no one's asked me that for a wee while now. I just like helping people, and I had just a strong interest in science and biology and chemistry, and it just at some point it became apparent to me that was my career path. So I probably around about 16, that was the decision I made, was to head down the pharmacy route.
And of course, then you had lots of experience in your work life, a lot of which really concentrated on science, research, and wellness. And it looks like you were very involved in providing healthcare to older adults, even towards the beginning of your career.
Yeah, we actually built a pharmacy that was completely focused on servicing older adults in residential care facilities. So we spent 15 years building that business up and made a lot of changes along the way. We were the first people to bring robotics into the country. And when I mean robotics, essentially these are machines that help you pack the medicines into wee pouches, which takes away the risk of doing that sort of thing manually. So it was a great adventure, and we ended up building that business up to be the largest pharmacy in New Zealand. It was certainly a fun time and challenging, I might add.
Well, the largest pharmacy in New Zealand is, a lot of kudos for doing that. Now, of course, when people think about pharmacists here in the United States, and I'm not sure about what goes on where you're joining us from, the other end of the world, where are you, in New Zealand?
Yes.
That's far away. So what is the thought form in terms of the difference or dividing line between natural and what would be considered pharmaceutical?
In New Zealand, it's very similar to America in that we've got, your regular medicines that get prescribed from your doctor, but also we've got access to all of the natural health products. And I think there's been a real increase in the awareness a real increase in the awareness of how nutraceuticals and supplements can actually help as part of just a daily strategy for general health and healthy aging.
Well, is there any, I would say, some doctors are only into what you would call conventional pharmaceuticals and don't really want to hear about nutraceuticals, or is it more of a comfortable dance there than it is here in the U.S.?
I think we're really similar. I've come up to the States and a bunch of times over the last decade. And, there are two sets of doctors, those that follow the standard route. And I guess I understand where they're coming from, because they've got a duty of care to patients to only prescribe evidence-based medicines. But there seems to be more and more who are more open to understanding how nutrition and supplementation can augment those therapies as well. So I think we're in a similar journey to those doctors that are in the States.
I guess so. In many areas of the world, it seems like they're easier to bring those two things together. So one of the things that I loved about reading in your book, which was just fascinating and really cutting edge research, it's called Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging. And we'll have that listed next to your name, Greg MacPherson, on our archive after, people might listen to this and want someone else to listen. But you really bring in a lot of the latest science when you talk about evidence-based. But I do want to say consistently the messaging is not just that you take this or that pill, but the starting level for anti-aging is diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, you bet. You'll be familiar with the blue zones, and if the audience haven't heard of them,
no, I want you to tell them, what is the blue zones?
Yeah, so the blue zones are a bit of research that happened from a longevity expert called Dan Buettner and a collaboration with National Geographic, and they set out to see if there are any places around the world where people had extraordinary longevity. And they found 5 zones around the world, dotted around the world, where, your chances of getting to 100 were extraordinarily higher than the rest of the population. And so they sat down and did some research just to understand exactly what was happening and what these people were doing that were different, and came away with a few insights. That the top 4 essentially were just these people embedded exercise into their daily life. They maybe it was a walk to work or it was just physical labor. They had plant-based diets. It's not to say that they didn't have the occasional steak, etc., but very much plant-based. And they also did something which was a little different to most of us. They stopped eating before they got full, and that actually has quite a significant impact. And we can talk about that a little bit later.
Not later. That's okay. An important point. I don't want to lose it. Share that.
Right. Yeah. So, I'll the other 2 points were really just to focus on friendships and the social elements of living. And then the other element was like a service-based lifestyle, whether that was faith-based or just some, community-based. And those 4 factors that were consistent across these groups just seemed to be really what helped these people live into old age with good health. So coming back to the fasting element, we're modern humans, but we've got ancient biology, and what I mean by that is that our cells have not adapted to the Western diet, the modern diet that we're living in, and that actually has quite a significant stress on our cells. And so it just happens that these people in the blue zones were following diets that actually suit our biology and much more similar to perhaps those diets that we had 100,000 years ago that we're really well adapted to. So that plant-based diet and that much less sugar than we typically consume in a Western diet, and not eating until you're fully full was the connection there. And so the fasting movement, and there are a lot of people that are aware of fasting, and obviously you need to be quite careful and responsible about how you approach fasting. But if what it does when you fast is that you switch your body from a fed state. In a fed state, you're busy building things in your body, building muscle and so on, to shifting to a fasting state. And when you shift to a fasting state, it gives your body a chance to actually break down some of the cells that are not working as well as they could, or some of the proteins that are not working as well as they could. So when you fast, you trigger those cascades in your body to do a bit of cellular housekeeping, and it's just really good for you, because when you do that and then you feed again, then your cells rebuild again nice and fresh and healthy, and that just has quite significant health benefits.
So when you're talking about fasting, is that for a full day, for certain hours, all week? What is your concept of fasting?
So I think when we talk about fasting, there's one fundamental thing that I think is really important, and that is, even if we don't fast, as long as we don't snack, then it's a good thing, because when the body gets food, it starts a whole bunch of processes from a biochemical level to deal with that food and assimilate it. And if you keep your body always fed, then that's not always a good thing. So first thing is, just eat 3 meals a day, and that's enough, But fasting can be just missing breakfast a couple of times a week, and that just gives your body a bit of time to not be fed and start to break down, get rid of some of the cells that it doesn't need. But personally, I fast for 24 hours twice a week. So on Sunday night, I'll have dinner, and then I don't eat again until Monday night, and then I don't eat again until Tuesday night, and then I just have a regular week. And why I do that is, one is I know that it's healthy for my body, but also coming into 50, it also helps me manage my weight because I really enjoy food. And so the rest of the week I can be guilt-free in what I'm enjoying.
Not worrying about it, knowing that you will be doing that fasting. And I want to remind our listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Our guest today is Greg MacPherson. He is a pharmacist, and he is the author of a new book that has a lot of the latest science. Very, very interesting. And we're talking to him today about his new book, Harnessing the 9 Hallmarks of Aging. So, Greg, what are some of these 9 hallmarks?
Yeah, so I like to break them into like 3 nice digestible chunks, so to speak. So, and just to give your audience a bit of a background, the 9 Hallmarks of Aging are actually not something I've come up with. It was a paper that was written and published in 2013 in the Cell Medical Journal, and it was a consensus from a bunch of scientists looking at trying to understand why we age and what changes in our cells as we age. And they in the absence of like one unified theory of aging, they came up with 9 areas of our cells that decline with aging. And that's a really significant paper because it's unleashed a huge amount of research around the world as scientists now understand the targets to look at and go after in terms of the aging process. So coming back to the hallmarks, there are 3 associated with our DNA. And our DNA is a really fascinating molecule. It's in our cells. Most people know about it, but if you don't, it's really the molecule that holds the instruction set for the cells and what makes us human beings. And it's a really interesting molecule. We're only really just getting a handle on understanding it, but we know a lot more obviously than we did even 2 years ago. And what we know now though is that the DNA gets damaged either from external forces, if you will, or insults like UV or X-rays or pollution, but also from internal forces and stresses like oxidative stress. And it can get damaged up to between 50 and 100,000 times a day per cell. And we've got trillions of cells. So it's just amazing that this little cellular machinery that we have, it works as well as it does. But because of that damage, the body and the cells put a huge amount of time into the repair and maintenance of it, just checking it all the time to make sure it's working or not. So as we get older, our DNA doesn't work so well. Repair and maintenance mechanisms don't work as well as they used to. And that actually manifests in aging. And a really, really easy way to see this is to look at the back of your hand, and you can see the damage that DNA happens as we age. And then if you flip your wrist over and have a look at the inside of your wrist, that's the same skin. It's just been exposed to less UV light, and so that's essentially what's happening at a cellular level through our whole body. And so if we can look after that DNA repair and improve it and just support it, then that helps with our aging quite significantly. And then the next little area of hallmarks is focused on our mitochondria. And for those of you who don't know mitochondria, they're tiny little batteries that sit in our cell, and they just keep the energy going. They convert the food we eat and the air we breathe and turn it into energy our cells can use. And just like a car engine, they kind of run out of steam as we get older. And so from our 30s and 40s, that decline in our mitochondria manifests in just feeling a bit more tired. Perhaps we don't heal as well as we used to, those sorts of things. So looking after our mitochondria is useful. And then the next set of hallmarks relate to cellular housekeeping, and that seems to decline as we age and head into our 50s and beyond. And so if we can get better at strategies around cellular housekeeping, then all of a sudden we've kind of helping those hallmarks and aging healthily.
And so also, you talked about fasting. And can we say a couple of words about food?
Yeah, we can. It really relates to our biology, and going back to 100,000 years ago, what's really different about what we're eating today than what we weren't back then is sugar, and really our body is just it kind of flips all sorts of negative switches in our body when we have consumed too much sugar. So that's a key thing, and the other thing is carbohydrates, which is kind of bread and donuts and things like that, which are really, the carbohydrates are complex sugars. And when they get into our body and stomach breaks it into simple sugars. So, sometimes having a bit of toast or a donut actually massively impacts on our body's glucose and sugar levels.
So a lot of those, they actually act like you're putting in chemical messengers when you're eating food. It breaks down into little molecules. And like you talk about in the fascinating science that you put together in your book, that harnessing the 9 hallmarks of aging, you talk about things like telomere attrition, epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, deregulated nutrient sensing, as well as the mitochondrial dysfunction that you talked about already, and cellular senescence, which is just that they are aging. But when you're talking about deregulated nutrient sensing, that's really interesting, because can't you, like by eating too much sugar, right, you're going to be sending that message so often that you're going to deregulate the messenger.
Totally. I mean, we're it's just we're fascinating machines, and I guess if you want to say at a cellular level. And when you enjoy a meal, your body senses what's coming into the stomach, and it works out what to do with that. So, if it's a protein, it's going to go right. Let's put that towards perhaps sending off to the muscle because we need to build a little muscle. If it's some sugar, then it's going to be going, what do I do with that? Do I have enough in my bloodstream? If I don't, let's put it there. And if not, if I've got too much, then it's going to be parked up in a fat cell or in the liver. Or if we've got some fat, the body's just constantly working out, what do I do with this? And so it's a nutrient sensing networks are essentially little receptors on our cells and enzymes and so on that just naturally deal to the diet and the food that we're eating. And if we overload on too much sugar, for example, it's just not good for us because the body doesn't quite know how to handle it. It puts it in places that are not healthy. And so being mindful about what you eat is actually fundamental to aging well.
And people often don't even recognize how much sugar they're ingesting, because they go, oh, well, I only put, let's say, 2 spoons of sugar in my coffee, which I put 0, okay? But that doesn't sound like a lot. But then if you think about every flavoring agent, even something like ketchup has sugar. And if you eat things that are in packages, which, by the way, I don't. I believe in paragraph-free eating, which means nothing has a paragraph on it. It's just a piece of food, right? No such thing as a box or things with writing on them. I don't eat those, but most people do. And every single time you read one of those paragraphs, even on something that says a protein bar, there's not protein really. It's just sugar.
Yeah, you just got to watch the hidden sugar in your diet for sure, and certainly processed foods, and they just for whatever reason there's just more and more sugar in these things. And even when you go and pick up you've got a diet mayonnaise and a regular a light mayonnaise and a full fat mayonnaise. Well, if you look at the diet one, quite often they've replaced the fat with sugar. So I don't go for the light. I go for the regular one because I'd rather take a little extra fat than a little extra sugar, just quietly.
Well, that's true. And I've written many books. One of the books that I wrote is called Weight Loss, the Alternative Medicine Definitive Guide. And actually in there, we talk a lot about eating healthy fats for weight loss because it also increases your feeling of being satisfied.
I love that, Alan. Yeah, absolutely. I think healthy fats are great. And when we have far too much sugar, that's actually when we start accumulating fat. So it's absolutely completely aligned with your thinking there.
So you have really done a lot of research on what we'll call nutraceuticals, which is where you are taking out some really healthy components of various foods. And, I love this because I've been doing this a long time, as my listeners know. I've been doing natural medicine since 1964. So, wow, that's over 50 years. And yet There's new things to learn every single day. So I have never heard of some of these things that you've actually been working on. So I'd love to talk about them as well. For instance, what is Hobamine?
Hobamine, I'm so excited about Hobamine. It's a breakthrough discovery. It comes from something called the Himalayan tartary buckwheat, and it's a molecule which tackles oxidative stress in our cells in a completely different way. So normally we take tons of antioxidants because we want to reduce oxidative stress and the free radical effects in our cells, and that's good because, especially as we get older, because we want to lower the oxidative stress in our cells. But there's actually a healthy level of oxidative stress that we actually need, and we use it for our immune system. We use it, the cells use it to communicate inside the cell and between cells. And so if you take too many antioxidants, then you can actually mute that healthy oxidative stress that we need.
In addition, let me just interject that they also can reverse course and become pro-oxidants as well.
Yes, absolutely. So it's just this fine line of exactly what to take, and there's research that have shown that in a group of elderly gentlemen, older gentlemen in their 80s, who some of them did exercise, and then another group did exercise plus took some antioxidants, and the guys that didn't take the antioxidants did a lot better in terms of responding and growing muscle, and so what they're suggesting there is that the oxidative stress associated with going to the gym and actually triggered the muscle growth. And when you took antioxidants, the body couldn't interpret those signals correctly. So, it's good to take antioxidants, but it's just, you just got to take them in moderation, I think. And what's exciting about Hobamine is that it acts as an antioxidant, but it doesn't interfere with the healthy free radical signaling or oxidative stress. And so what that allows us to do is get all the benefit of an antioxidant without some of the downsides. And that's what makes it such a breakthrough. And there's just a huge amount of research happening now in terms of Alzheimer's, in terms of heart disease, in humans with this molecule, because it looks like it's going to have significant effect. And I like to think of it as almost, I'm not quite sure if it's the right description, but it's like sunscreen for our DNA. It actually really protects and gets in there and protects our DNA from oxidative stress, and does it in a way it's not been done before.
So this is a specific molecule called Hobamine. I'm sure many of our listeners, I'm sure it's the first time you've heard of it. Many of you, it's the first time I've heard of it, and I try to stay on top of this, always learning new things. And you're saying that it's called 2-HOBA, and it's specifically from Himalayan buckwheat. Is it only found in that specific plant?
That's where they identified it from, Alan. So yes, that's, as far as I know, that is the only place that you can get it, and you obviously need to eat a lot. So we've worked out, well, the inventors have worked out, or the guys that discovered it have worked out a way to extract it in quantities which enable us to have useful amounts in our body.
Okay, but I'll just throw out that my grandmother, who was Jewish, always cooked buckwheat and something called kasha vanishkas, as a matter of fact. So you just wonder at some of these, older, authentic type foods. Wasn't necessarily Himalayan buckwheat, and I'm wondering if the 2-HOBA is specific to only that kind of buckwheat.
My understanding is it is, but I'll actually need to go and have a look back at my books.
There you go. We'll give you an assignment, because there's always more to learn, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So another very interesting one is NMN. What is that about?
So NMN is nicotinamide mononucleotide, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's a precursor to a really useful enzyme in our body called NAD. And you will have heard of NAD because it's, you may have, but it's becoming more and more research to understand is a bit of a really interesting molecule which helps our health. And so we lose NAD for whatever reason as we get older. And it turns out when you supplement with NMN, that you build your NAD back up. And NMN is you get it naturally in a number of vegetables and milk, but you'd have to drink about 2,000 glasses of milk to get the NAD boosting levels that you need. So having a supplement is really the way to go. And NAD supports a couple of enzymes called sirtuins in our bodies, and sirtuins are involved in DNA repair and maintenance, and also involved in the energy generation process in our mitochondria. So by supplying the body with lots of NAD, it just means those enzymes can work a wee bit better, and it has an incredible effect on your cells and your body. And there's just thousands of papers coming out now showing it has benefit for cardiovascular health, for brain health, just general energy levels. And what's exciting is these things haven't been available to previous generations. So we get the benefit of not only understanding diet and exercise and the benefit there, which we've known for a very long time, but then getting and having these molecules available to us is just going to level up our ability to be healthier for much longer.
Well, we're getting towards the end of our time together here, and we have been talking today with Greg MacPherson, and he is the author of Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of anti-aging type books, Greg, but you really have cutting-edge information in this book.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. It's a result of 10 years of, just thinking and focusing on aging and really at a biotechnology or biological level. And it's just fantastic to be able to share it with people now, and just for people to understand how accessible this sort of information is and how they can translate it and adopt it for themselves and help their aging journey.
And what would be the easiest way for people to find out more about you and your book?
So we're on Amazon. So just if people can search for Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging, then they should be able to find that. And my name is Greg MacPherson. And so if you put those two phrases together, Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging and Greg MacPherson, hopefully Google will find me for you.
Well, thank you. They will. And also what we do is we have an archive if people listen to this and want to listen again or tell their friends. And on the archive, we always have a direct link. So thank you so much for being our guest today, Greg, pharmacist Greg MacPherson, and author of this, extremely interesting book. If you're interested in healthy aging, Harnessing the Nine Hallmarks of Aging. So thank you, listeners, so much for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced in the studios or nearby at 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, send us an email at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.